most reasonably unbiased observers are saying that the the global situation is deteriorating rapidly, that the risk of nuclear war is extremely high. There's terrible things happening in several places. There's various hotspots, but you know, un, and there have been times when this would not have been seen as bad as it is, but right now the war in Ukraine is absolutely got everybody on edge. They are scared to death there's going to be a nuke use. Meanwhile, the Middle East blows up, and there's still enormous amount of terrorist groups out there prepared to act given a get out of jail free card, and that could easily result in a terrorist nuke event. China and all of this instability is encouraging China to possibly make a major move. They're doing everything but land troops on Taiwan. They're circling with ships. They're flying missiles over it. There's intersections in the air and so forth. They're creating islands and new spaces of zone spaces in the South China Sea. That whole thing could blow at any time, and so we're on the edge. I'm suggesting the reason the ETs are doing this is to close the deal. In other words, politically in the US, we're very close to maybe doing it, but we can't quite get there. And this is designed to take us over the top. That is the only explanation I have. Why in hell you're having this many, quote, plasma like, ball like events that whether they're solid or not solid, whether they're manned or not manned, they are not natural. They simply are not natural, and we can't explain them. And so I'm calling this an ET intervention, literally. And everybody in America, particularly, I mean, people around the world, particularly in America, know what an intervention is. It is one of those words of the year. An
Sure.
intervention is something that happens all the time in our society because the stress on people in our society based upon the way we're conducting our affairs and disintegration of various social institutions, the collapse of this, the collapse of that, and of course the threat of nuclear war that's been with us since we were born, is that the United States, the people of the United States are one of the largest consumers of drugs of all types in the world. And we are addicted to everything, right? There's almost
Yeah.
nothing we're not addicted to. And
Sure.
as a result, people's lives are being ruined, and you have this intervention where family and friends surprise them when they thought they were going to a dinner, and they sit down, and the person's in the middle, and they start trying to tell them how much they love them and why they need to get their act together, and all these reasons, and hopefully
Yeah.
then they go to rehab. So we know what an intervention is. A lot of people have either been the subject of them or part of them. I
Sure.
say this is an intervention because we are dysfunctional. We are harming ourselves. We are an incredible risk to ourselves. But of course, most interventions invariably involve addictions and addicted to something. Right? I mean, they may
Sure.
have screwed up their life and their marriage and their job and everything, and that needs to be fixed. But first, they got to get that monkey off their back. And
Sure.
so, if the ETs are intervening with human race right now, what is it that the human race is addicted to that requires this? And the answer is war.
Interesting.
We're addicted to war, and they're trying to finally get that monkey off our back by confronting us with their reality and thus disclosure. That is my interpretation of what's going on as delivered as maybe a 10, 15 minute set at the improv,
Yeah. So just to steelman
not
this
a white
back,
paper.
no. So to steelman this back,
I will
you're
take your questions.
essentially your theory is that the NHI, non-human, these aliens are, intervening, showing themselves to us to basically make us aware of our addiction, right? That we're addicted to war to help save us, essentially, right? Just to break it down. I mean,
Well,
essentially, is that just in a nutshell?
that's the overall. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, overall.
That's the core, right? I mean, there's much more involved here than just the fact we're addicted to war. We got a lot of problems, but it's also
Sure.
the fact that we need to acknowledge their presence, because there are a lot of things that could possibly come from that. Whatever, they have hardly gone. They've been pretty aggressive over the last 77 years in ensuring that we're never going to be able to leave the issue alone, right? Walk away from it. Our governments could not just get out from under it. They've been very clear. They do all kinds of stuff. People say, why don't they land on the White House lawn? Well, they may eventually do that, but they're doing plenty to drive this issue. They've been doing it for some time.
But
And
why do you think they want to
it's
save us or
important.
help us? What evidence is there that they're here to help us, or this intervention? Because an intervention is based on what you explained, right? That intervention is based on, I love this person. I want to see them get back to, whatever, right? A good standing.
Yeah.
What evidence do we have that they actually care about us?
We've got some very good evidence. Of course, understand now, when you say the citizen research effort, uh,
Sure.
thousands of people spending their own money and giving up their lives in order to try to understand this issue, because the government says there's no there there, there's nothing there, which is
Sure.
going to historically will be viewed as one of the ridiculous, obscene things that any government's ever done, and, given that we're a democratic republic. All right.
Yeah,
So,
I hear you.
one, there have been hundreds of thousands of contactee reports privately sent to researchers. A very small percentage of these have been put in books, right, that have been written about contact, and so they'll have this account and that account and so forth. And that's fine. That's important. But a lot of people think that the only people that have had contact with ETs are the ones that are turning up in them books. No, no, no. For most of the last 77 years, people, they've been in the closet. In other words, one of the great closeted groups out there, still hanging in closets, is our contactees, though it's getting better. And so the number is quite large, it turns out. And so while they
Yeah.
were not going to give an interview to somebody for a book, or they weren't going to go on television, what they could
Sure.
do is send an account of their contact to researchers, right? Now, they could sign it, not sign it, didn't matter, but essentially it's a private thing. I, I can tell you, I can't tell my family, but I can tell you. And so
Sure.
hundreds of thousands of these reports have been accumulating in the files of researchers for decades,
Okay.
emails and letters. I don't think they
Yeah.
leave voice messages. All right. And so from, and though they haven't been studied and curated the way they need to be, because it would cost millions of dollars and we can't get money for that,
Sure.
because the government truth embargo. But they have been looked at. Whitley Strieber and his wife Ann probably have looked at more than any living person. But Mac, Hopkins, all these have looked at them. And one of the things, there are a couple of things that are very important that emerge out of those accounts,
Okay.
which vary. I mean, there's a somewhat of a spectrum of
Sure.
of of stuff. But the two things that are most important for me and the political activist process are these. One, there are many instances where the extraterrestrial conveys to the contactee that they are from the stars.
Yeah.
That is non-trivial. All right.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is that and this is much more common. The number of instances, I think, in which that it turns up in the account is X, but the number of times that this other thing happens, which is many times X, is that they convey to the contactee during the event images telepathically that seem to show a very unpleasant future for this planet, right?
Okay.
Destruction, uh, whatever. They convey it, and however they do, but it's clearly an image of, well, we'll call it an apocalyptic image, and I'm sure they vary. And the message is clear. Why do you do that? They don't do it for the hell of it, right? And what they're not doing is notable. They're not, contactees are not coming back and saying, well, look, they took me aside and then they started giving me all these images of an unbelievable future here in the earth. Oh my God, it's going to be wonderful. They don't do that. It's always this kind of apocalyptic scenario. That's one piece of evidence. Two, there is the reported instances in which they land next to schoolyards. And this has been studied, but not nearly to the level that it should be. There are
Yeah,
two
like the aerial
well-known
school, right?
cases. Ariel School in Westall in Australia. But it's there's more than that.
In
And
South Africa too, or what was the other one?
the aerial schools in it's in
Uh,
South Africa, was in
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe,
Yeah,
and
Zimbabwe.
but
Sorry.
in the others in Australia, but they've done it other places, and those just
Sure.
haven't had the funds to research them. And what is extraordinary about these cases, where they land next to a schoolyard with this, where the kids are outside, right,
Yeah.
which is a very common situation, and they leave the craft. Actual entities leave the craft. The kids are drawn to them, and then when the kids are, kind of near the craft, and they put images in their heads like
Yeah.
they're doing with the contactees. Now,
Sure.
this seems, why do they need to do this? What aren't these kids are not these kids have had problems. I mean, it's created problems for them. It has affected them. It's a PTSD thing for some, and their lives were not
Sure.
helped by this. But the image that they do it with school kids. That's two. All right. But here's the big one, right? Here is the one that matters the most. And we'll be
Okay.
talking about this. We have absolute confirmation on an X number of occasions, total number not known. It's at least 6 or 7 or 8, could be 9, 10, 11, 12, that in the United States and in the Soviet Union, they would come down, hover over a nuclear ICBM or missile site and turn the missiles off.
Yeah.
Now, and they might have done it other places. They could have been doing it in China, but China has just simply it's not out. They absolutely squelched that, which they could do. Soviet Union was also a very authoritarian state, but it got out for various reasons. And so we have confirmation of these shutdowns. We also have confirmation of 2 turn-ons, one in the Soviet Union and one in the United States, in which they set the missiles in motion to launch. We didn't do anything. And that was even more traumatic, obviously, than the shutdowns, to be honest with you, because we were able to turn the missiles back on, right? But the launch sequence thing, where at the very last minute they stopped it, scared the hell out of people. All I can say is this: I consider that a huge piece of evidence that the use of these weapons is concerning to them. All right.
Interesting.
And then you could say, well, why? Some people go this way, that the use of these weapons is going to harm them, hurt them, right? They get into elaborate theories about affecting, that they operate in another dimension and it's affecting them there, or it has some sort of profound effect on, in some sort of strange way through the quantum fields, whatever. I have very little confidence in it. I don't think that's it, right? Now, I feel confident they have bases on this planet that makes total sense, right? In the early days, people thought, well, they got the motherships and they come and go from the motherships, and there are things that sightings seem to look like motherships, but frankly, no, they're going to have bases, right? And there's a lot of evidence for that. So they have bases, and they're on the planet, right? But they're hard to get to, under mountains, under the seabed, whatever. But nuclear war could possibly be a problem for them, or not. All right. But the most logical explanation is that they don't like the idea of us destroying or contaminating the planet, destroying our civilization. And so this is a message: don't do that.